Hello, listeners. I'm your host, Renee R. White of Creeping and Preaching, a proud native Washingtonian, born, raised, and still live here in the heart of D.C. I've spent many years of my life in this incredible city, and it's not just my home, it's where my story began and how my passion for uplifting my community, especially the youth. This podcast is a space where we can have real, raw conversations about life, faith, and purpose, all rooted in the experience of someone who has walked these very streets and understands the struggles and the beauty of life in DC. So let's get real, let's get honest, and let's grow, because change starts here. Welcome to Creeping and Preaching. Listeners, this year, let's continue with more sharing and more shedding at the same time. I'm looking for someone who has similar stories which they want to share here on Creeping and Preaching. If you're someone that's interested, please reach out to me, email with your information, and we will be in touch with you. Or if you want me to revisit some topics with which we can discuss, and which I have discussed in prior episodes, please let me know. Your response means the world to me. Well, let's begin. I like to talk about the time my ex took my shoes. This discussion is called He Brought Them New and Took Them Too. He brought them new and took them too. All right, listeners. Let me tell you all about something that still make me laugh. It still make me laugh, and I shake my head to this day. It's a funny story. This story takes me back to when I was a teenager. I'm quite sure by now, if you read my book and you're listening to this podcast, you're like, what kind of teenage life she had? Is these real stories? These are all real stories. This is not something I heard from someone else. This is something which I lived through, and I'm here to tell it. So, on this particular story, how do I say that? How do I say this? The story began with, it takes me back to my teenage years, as I said. The years when I'm reckless, I'm fast-moving years. I thought I knew it all, of course. Spoiler alert, I didn't. So I had this boyfriend. Everybody knew I was from uptown. If you knew me back then, you knew him, and you knew who he was. So dealing with him, I thought I was the cat's meow. I had everything. You know how when you're young and you're thinking you're in love, about how much attention someone gives you, right? Well, my ex had this way of making me feel special, even though now I know it was all a lot of manipulation. Total manipulation. Total manipulation. One day, he brought me these shoes. Those was a new K-Swiss that just came out. Because back in the day, that's what we rocked, K-Swiss. And it just wasn't about the shoes. It was these shoes, the new, brand new, hot off the presses, K-Swiss. The ones that I wanted. They were hot and they were fresh. And I was so proud of them. I was thinking, oh man, he really cared. All right, he spent his money on my shoes. Okay, we good to go. Fast forward. Just a few weeks later, as I was walking to school, feeling real good about myself, rocking my new shoes with my Jordache jean jacket that I just got from the general store, I thought I was fly. I remember the weather was decent. It was like springtime. And for that moment, life didn't feel so heavy. Then out of the blue, out of nowhere, here comes my boyfriend, or should I say my soon-to-be ex-boyfriend. He stops me right there on 14th Street as I'm heading towards Roosevelt. I thought he was coming to say hello, or no, not today. He looks down at my feet and says, I want my shoes back. You all, I started laughing because I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. This man stood there, waited for me to take the shoes off, right there in the middle of 14th Street while I was on my way to school. Now, let me tell you, my pride kicked in. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I wasn't about to let him embarrass me like that. I was looking fly, fresh. I looked at him and said, "Are you serious?" He folded his arms and said, "Yeah, take them off, they mine. I bought them." I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, but let me tell you something about teenager Renee. I was stubborn, and I had a little too much pride for my own good. So what did I do? I kicked the shoes off right on the sidewalk and handed them to him. Barefoot and pissed off, I turned around and kept walking to Roosevelt like nothing happened. Let me tell you, the walk to Rose that day felt like the longest walk of my life. My feet hurt, my pride hurt, and my feelings hurt even more. But when I finally got to school, I told my friends about what happened. They started laughing, and honestly, I had to laugh too, because who does that? Who asks for their shoes back? But it didn't stop there. Later that day, when I got home, my granny was sitting on the porch. You know how grandmothers have that look? Oh yeah, the look. They already know something happened before you even open your mouth. Well, she looked at me. She looked me up and down and noticed I didn't have those new shoes on. And she asked, "Renee, where are your shoes?" I hesitated, but I told her. Her response, Renee, I told you. And I hope that you learn your lesson one day. At that time, I rolled my eyes because I thought I knew everything about everything. But now, her words hit me so differently. Granny wasn't just talking about my shoes. Granny was talking about life. Granny was talking about love. And Granny was talking about how I needed to know my worth. Looking back, it wasn't about the shoes. It was about control. That moment taught me something I didn't realize at the time. When someone gives you something, and they give you something, whether it's a gift or love, it shouldn't come with strings attached. Because that's not real love. It doesn't demand you to give it back. When things go sour or south, as they always do, real love doesn't humiliate you or leave you walking barefoot to school. So, to my listeners out there, if anyone ever tries to take your shoes, that's your confidence, your peace, or your dignity. Don't let them. Stand tall. Even if you're standing barefoot. That day, I may have walked into school with no shoes, but I walked out with a little bit more understanding of my wealth. And trust me, no pair of shoes is worth more than that. Let's keep this conversation going. I'm excited to hear how you're peeling back your layers and seeing your worth. Also, make sure you visit my website, creepingandpreaching.com, for more updates, resources, fresh merch, and information about upcoming episodes. I'd like to thank my producer, McKinley, with Moving Emotion by Matt. See you next week.